What's up, traders? Welcome to this week's episode of the Weekend Crypto Report, where I do a technical analysis and give you my thoughts on the coins listed up above. The goal of this segment, since it is new to the channel, is to sort of give you an idea of what may be going on with crypto over the course of the weekend while our beloved stock market is closed. So in just a minute, I'll drill down to the hourly so we can get a more granular look. But for now, I want to give you some wide thoughts on the Bitcoin weekly chart. So zooming out a bit here, I want to point out the sort of consolidation and stabilization, if you will, around this $30,000 to $40,000 per coin mark, okay? And I think this is a good thing for Bitcoin. So as volatility comes out of this, that's going to be, a good thing for widespread adoption of the technology and potentially a use case as, for this as a currency as opposed to something to just trade as an instrument. So overall, I think that's a good thing for Bitcoin. If you just look at what happens here, right, that's about a 50% retracement, I would say, of the move higher. But if you look at prior Bitcoin runs, right, so something here retraced 100% just about. If you scroll back again, this one, same exact thing, retraced nearly 100%. We'll go one more, right? So scrolling back a little bit here, but finding our last major run, retraced nearly 100%. And it's just different this time around with Bitcoin. Now, don't get me wrong, this could potentially be the start of an overall head and shoulders pattern, but I do like the consolidation above 30,000, the nice round number. I think as long as it stays above that area, again, that's going to bode well for the widespread acceptance and potential use case for Bitcoin as a currency as opposed to just some sort of instrument to trade. So let's get into what's going to go on over the course of this weekend, though, and of course talk about trading as opposed to widespread adoption. Bitcoin. So hourly time frame looks like we're putting in a bit of a hourly bull flag here. But what I want to advise you is we're in the middle of a sideways channel, right? If you just look at the price history that's been going on here, we're pretty much at that area, right? So this is the channel, of course, and whenever you're at the 50% mark of a given channel, generally our advice is that's not a good place to initiate a new position. Rather, it's a good place to take off a position, take some profits, right? So that being said, right, there's a few things you can watch out for. First of all, the hourly bull flag, if it breaks, look for continuation higher and monitor for continuation higher. I would just trail my stop up as we move through this area of sort of overhead supply here. And again, the 50% of the overall range. The next thing to watch out for would be a retrace to a support trend line. And that could be drawn in something like this. If we go from the low and go in like this, boom, we get 1, 2, 3 touches. So 1, 2, 3, even 4 actually touches to that support trend line. Any pullback into it could potentially be viable on that first touch, in which case you're looking to retarget essentially this swing high wherever it falls down from, right? That would be the first target, and that could very well happen over the course of the weekend. If we make it up here to the top over the course of the weekend, then what I would be looking out for is a potential first touch short to play the range, right? We're in a sideways channel. The overall daily trend is kind of sideways as well, so you're not really looking and expecting for huge breakouts in market conditions like this. Let's move on to Litecoin. Litecoin is almost the same. What I want to point out is, of course, this inverted head and shoulders. So 1, 2, and 3, shoulder 2 there. Neckline was here. Breaking that again, hourly. I keep getting that wrong. Hourly bull flag here. I would target, right up here at 139 the whole dollar, simply because if we look left, there's another area of resistance here. Let's change that to white to match up with what we're using. So I like that, right? If we can consolidate under a known area of resistance and then break it, it would make sense that we go to the next target, which in this case is around 139. I would even argue that we could potentially head higher than that. If we adjust this, right, based on new data, right, and do something like this, I'm not going to say it's going to go all the way up to 143 just about, but I do think there's more room in the tank than just 139, so keep that in mind on Litecoin. Any pullbacks, I wouldn't really be interested in buying here. I'd rather play the breakout because this pattern should really resolve itself, right, to the upside and not fail back down into this range. Next up, we have Ethereum. Checking in on this one. Nice double bottom in place. Again, a lot of crypto is going to look very similar, but this is more to give you an idea of the levels to play against. So, nice move higher, retracing a majority of it. However, double bottom in place, taking out the neckline. Again, just like we had in the past two coins. Hourly bull flag. I had to force myself not to say daily there, and taking out sort of this area of resistance. So again, just like what we looked at in Litecoin, rather, consolidation here sets up the move to go higher. I would argue that the next target above is kind of, I wouldn't say it's here anymore because we have all this emotional panic. There's not a whole lot of market structure until we get up into that 2268.50 range. Basically, it's this prior area of support, and it's where we took a brief little pause on the way down. So that would be my first target to the upside on a nice bounce here in Ethereum. Again, we would have to really clear this most recent sort of pivot high around this 2180. Again, because we have a double bottom in place here and we did already take out the neckline, I would not really be interested in trading any dips down here, or buying any dips rather, because that would be negative progress, right? That's not how we want to see the pattern play out. Let's move over to ADA, which of course is Cardano. This one was underneath a resistance trendline. That's no longer in place. So we'll clean up the chart a bit by doing that. Just like the rest of our charts, kind of a bottom in place with a neckline in play. So we'll go ahead and mark that area out. Any breaks over 1.375, we'll call it, just for round numbers sake, I would look to target 1.397. And then after that, again, adjusting based on more current data, your next target is really up here around $1.44, just about the round number. This V-shaped recovery, again, we have a higher set of lows in here. I would be willing to buy this on a pullback to the support trend line if we do something like this. Boom, there's your potential entry somewhere here, looking for that first touch bounce to come up and revisit this sort of neckline that we've formed around that breakout area, as we just discussed, is $1.37.50. Okay, next up we have Doge. This thing completely fell apart from where it was. We talked about this sort of descending triangle, this flush point, and what do you know? It broke down. This is not something I would ever advise anyone to hold for a long term. I've been very transparent about my thoughts on this. So if you're not a fan of it, I'm sorry. It is what it is. You don't have to agree with me, but so far I have been right? So let's go ahead and draw in a resistance trend line. That's kind of in play here. Interestingly enough, I'm not a huge believer in this, but this has interestingly backtested the resistance trend line from the past a few times. So just because it's working, I am going to leave it on the chart. But do know that's not a part of a strategy that I regularly use. Maybe the first touch can be a interesting reaction. However, just the fact that it did this twice is totally sort of out of the blue. I wouldn't expect it to continue to work into the future. But for now, we're not going to ignore the fact that yes, this is too forming a bit of an hourly bull flag. It's a little bit more sloppy with a deeper pullback here, something like that. But any sort of break over the resistance trend line, I would just look to target 23.85. And after that, really just walking up resistance. There's going to be a few more before we get into that next area around the quarter mark. And that, of course, is going to be, if we just sort of split the difference there, right around that 24.33 mark. So some overhead resistance, honestly, here in Dogecoin. It doesn't look good at the support trend line, but, it does have an hourly bull flag. Technically, we are in a stronger downtrend, though, than many of the other coins that we've talked about thus far. So Doge fans, I'm sorry, it is what it is. Next up, we have Ripple. This one broke out of the falling wedge that we talked about. Remember, that's actually a bullish pattern, right? So it did break out to the upside, but now it certainly is lower. We're going to clean up the chart a little bit. You could make an argument for a resistance trend line like this to be in play. We're kind of at it now. Again, watching for the consolidation underneath, right at this breakout level as well. So inverted head and shoulders, just like I believe it was Litecoin we were looking at. Breakout point in play and potential for an hourly bull flag consolidation. This one actually looks good. Instead of, Bitcoin being in the middle of the range, this one looks good that if we can consolidate here and break this area of super resistance, I don't see why it wouldn't come up and tag our next area above around 66.75. I would even adjust this slightly higher based on some more relevant data, right? Somewhere in here. If you look to the left, prior support, and then prior resistance, you get some of these highs in here as well. So maybe let's just round it up there to about 67 cents, the round number here in Ripple. Just like we talked about in Litecoin, not really willing to let this one come back down into the range for a dip buy, simply because the inverted head and shoulders should be working out now that we have broken the neckline. Next up, we'll go over to DOT. Of course, that's Polkadot. And again, inverted head and shoulders. Sorry, this stuff looks oh so similar, but really just trying to point out the levels that you need to be paying attention to. Again, prior falling wedge did break out to the upside, now sort of retracing a significant portion of that move. But from a zoomed out perspective, right, technically you have something like this, that is a higher low, so it's trying to make forward and upward progress. It's not failing back as hard as it was, but in terms of the upcoming weekend, right, the area you want to see it hold now that it has technically broken, and it's kind of retesting right now, is 1561, we'll call it, okay? As long as it holds on to that area, I would expect the break to move higher. And in this instance, we do have some historic resistance around 1640, but really there could be a bump in the road before that. So I would look to take some profits around this area here. The reason why we're going to use that as well is because prior resistance, support, and a little breather on the way back down, right? So pay attention to 1615 on the way up after we break or potentially hold above that 1561 as discussed. Next up, we have Unicorn or Uniscorn. Uniswap, it's one or the other. I can't remember which. And again, you'll get to know which coins I actually pay attention to versus the ones I don't. These are the ones I kind of don't. But however, this isn't a nice uptrend. We talked about this inverted head and shoulders in last week's video, and boom, it kind of gave us what we were looking for. Not to say that we don't have another one, right? So inverted head and shoulders here, higher low, neckline has already broken, pulling back a little bit. I would say as long as we hold on to the neckline breakout area, so that would be here, we're good to go. So that's at 21.02, call it 21 the whole dollar. To the upside, we are finding a little resistance at prior support, so we do want to be aware that a stronger breakout could come in if we take out 21.65, we'll call it for round numbers sake, in which case you're looking at this as our next target. And that's a decent little trade here. If we can get some legs underneath us here in uni, your area to target would be up there around 22.69, call it 22.70, a nice round number. Again, because we have an inverted head and shoulders that has already played out, broken the neckline, we're not really interested in taking any longs back in this area of consolidation and chop. Next up, we have Link, and Link, nice double bottom here, already broken the neckline. What I like about it as well, we're just going to adjust this lower to the double bottom, and then of course we're going to draw in our neckline. And just like many of the other things, I hate to sound so repetitive, this is forming an hourly bull flag, of course, above the neckline break here. Your first target would be up at our prior pivot, which is here. So any breakout really over that 1875, we'll call it, we're looking at 1906 as the target above. After that, look left. Where is your next major area of resistance? I would argue it's probably this zone right up here around 2018. Okay, so definitely a bull case to be made here with the double bottom in play, breaking the neckline and consolidating up above. Again, just like everything else, not really interested in taking this as a long if we fail back down towards this. Sure, it could turn into a triple bottom, but because this most recent trend is down, I wouldn't really place too strong of a bet on that particular trade. Next up, we have XLM, and last up, of course, this one wasn't a solid downward channel. And again, maybe this is just a crypto thing actually, but look at this nice back test of the resistance trend line. Not saying it has to work every time, but again, an interesting nuance to note there. We're going to get rid of that. And of course, just like everything else, that's not really in play anymore. This is forming a double bottom. Neckline has been taken out, but the flag that's forming is now here, right? So this isn't part of the neckline. The neckline would have been here on the double bottom, right? So something like that. And as it currently sits, any consolidation and flag that's put in underneath 2480, let's put a level to that, here is going to strike me as bullish, right? If we're making forward and upward progress, maybe this actually turns into a higher time frame inverted head and shoulders. So this would be shoulder one. This, of course, would be the head. And as long as we consolidate back here above that 23, let's call it 23.95, that would strike me as a higher low. Boom, off to the races on the break of the neckline, which in this case, the price is trading around right now. That's 24.80. Okay, so targets above would certainly be the bottom end of this consolidation range at 25.55, and then moving this up higher to represent a more realistic and useful target at 26.51 would be the sort of top of that range. If you really want to hold out and think this thing's going all the way, then your major target would be up there around 27.23 into the upcoming weekend. Okay, so I hope this was helpful just to run down through some of these patterns, give you an idea of some of what, where some of these are trading in. Don't ignore the overall trend that they're in, but from an hourly perspective, there are certainly some setups worth noting. You can see this one's already trying to go here over that neckline. So I'm going to end the video here, get it out fast enough. That way you guys can actually use this information. I wish you all a green trading weekend if you decide to trade crypto, and I will see you on Sunday for the weekly watch list before our beloved stock market opens on Monday.